live right now. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for your patience. But, now we're all virtual, which is fantastic because we can have Martha in the same
Mike, why is
screen. And now I'm going to mute you, Martha. Okay. So here we go. Welcome, everyone. I am Kim Havens. I'm the event manager at Unlikely Story. I'm so excited to welcome Martha Hall Kelly and Pam Jenoff in conversation to introduce our sister, Martha Hall Kelly's new novel that you're absolutely going to love. So before we start, I'm going to go over a couple technical tips really quick. If you're having any with your picture, click on the help button on compatibility mode. You can turn it off at any time. If you have any problem with your sound, you lose your sound or your video, just jump out of the browser and jump right back in. And we will have questions at the end, time allowing. So if you have any questions, please feel free to answer them in the question box at the bottom of the screen. If you would like to purchase a signed copy of Sunflower, click on the green button below and we will get a copy out. So Martha Hall Kelly is a native New Englander, author of the 1.5 million copy bestselling novel, Lilac Girls, which introduced readers to Carolyn Faraday, an American philanthropist who helped young girls released from Ravensbrück concentration. She wrote two books, Lilac Girls. The first, last takes place in World War I and tells the story of Carolyn's mother, Eliza's fight for refuge by the there. And now in Sunflower, Martha tells the story of ancestor Georgiana Woolsey, a Union nurse, finds the war effort and how her calling leads her to cross paths with a young enslaved girl who was drifted into the army, Anne May Wilson, a mistress whose husband enlists, brother enlists on the side, and oh my gosh. So Martha worked as an advertising writer for many years and raised three wonderful children, one of whom got us going this evening. Thank you very much. While researching and writing Lilac. She lives in Connecticut, and Martha's been here. Joining her is Pam Jenoff, the author of many fantastic novels, including The Confidential Girl, which was an international bestseller nominated for the Quill Award, as well as The Lost Girls of Paris, which we were so delighted to hear. Before becoming a best-selling author, Pam worked at the Pentagon, then the State Department, where she was assigned to the U.S. Consulate in Sao Paulo. It was during this period that Pam developed her expertise in Polish-Jewish relations and the Holocaust, developing close relationships with surviving Jewish people. She joins us from outside Philadelphia, where she lives with her husband and three children. And her new novel, The Woman with the Blue Scar, will be released before, and you can pre-order it with us. So, if you don't want to hear me, it is my distinct pleasure to welcome Martha Hall Kelly and Pam Jenoff. You got everyone for your team. Oh my gosh. Yay.
Hi, Pam. I wanted to meet you forever.
So Martha, you are like the oldest friend I've never met, because we've been circling each other, for years, and I've watched your meteoric rise over the past 3 books. And last year, you were very close to my hometown in Haddonfield, New Jersey, right before COVID. It might have been one of the last events before COVID. And I didn't get to see you, so we are long overdue. But thank you for inviting me to chat with you about your incredible new book.
This is so fun, and congratulations on yours coming out. You're right behind me. I have my copy right here.
Oh, you are good.
It's so good. Oh my God. But I made a note to ask you, 5 a.m. Writers Club, you get up every day at 5 and talk?
There's actually really a thing called 5 a.m. Writers Club, and there's some writers who are way better at it than I am. Karma Brown is there, and Heather Webb, and some really good authors, but people sort of check in on Twitter and support each other in the wee hours. But I've always been a morning writer. How about you? What is yours?
Definitely. Yeah, I'm more like 7 though. Yeah. 5. Oh man.
See, I have small children.
Yeah, you have little kids, so you're probably up, right?
I am. And what killed 5 a.m. Writers Club was getting a puppy. because
Oh
when
my
the
God.
puppy wants to play at 5 a.m., I was like, I'm done. Like, I'll never write another word, but it worked out. It worked out.
Yeah, puppies and writing. I don't know. It's
Now
tough.
it's good.
I did the same thing. Yeah.
Did you get a pandemic puppy, or you've had one for a while?
No, I had one. Once Lilac Girls, became a thing, I kind of had more power at home in my relationships. And I'd always wanted a dog, and my husband had said no. And so I said, you know what? I want a dog. And he was like, okay. And so, be careful what you wish for. But
yeah, how'd you get that power at home? We'll talk later. I need that. But
that came with being, because I had retired for a long time after I had my kids. And so my husband was the breadwinner, and he was out doing everything. And I was just kind of support at home.
Yeah, right.
So once I became, in my own right, having a career again, with that came some new power. I don't know. It was pretty great. Yeah. But anyway, this is amazing. And no, I'm not going to give any spoilers, but Papa, what happened? Oh my God. What happened to him? I was just like,
oh my goodness.
So good at that. Yeah.
But I want to talk about Sunflower Sisters. So today's Thursday. So this book is like a full 2 days old in the world, right? This is Pub Week. Happy Pub Week.
Thank you. It's so fun.
So what I want to ask you is, obviously some people may have read it if they're quick readers, and I've read it, but many people have not. This is a first introduction. So introduce us to Sunflower Sisters and tell us, no spoilers, but tell us what it's about.
Okay. Well, I think most people know me best from Lilac Girls, my first book. And that was, I discovered that story by going up to the Bellamy Faraday House and Gardens, which is a museum, but it was Carolyn Faraday's a country home. She was a New Yorker, and she died in the mid-90s, but she was a socialite and Broadway actress. And when I went up to visit her house because of the lilacs, I saw a photograph on her desk. She had passed away already, but I asked the docent, who are those women? And it was like 50 or so women lined up in rows. And she said, oh, those are the rabbits. They were Polish women who were at Ravensbrück concentration camp. And they called them the rabbits as a nickname because they were operated on in these horrible medical experiments where their legs were opened up and they were in terrible shape. So she knew Genevieve de Gaulle. And Genevieve said, I was at Ravensbrück and I knew these women and they really need help. So Caroline brought them to the US for help and trip of a lifetime. Everybody knows that from Lilac Girls. But when I first started researching Lilac Girls in the archives there at the house, she actually has 3 archives. One's in Paris, one's at the US Holocaust Museum. I discovered her Wolsey ancestors, and there's a whole wall of archival boxes down in the basement. And I had read every letter. I mean, there are hundreds of letters, and I read them all. And I started, you can almost know before you even read the letter which of the 7 sisters it's from. So Carolyn Faraday had a great grandmother named Jane Eliza, and she had 7 daughters and 1 son. And sadly, her husband died before the son was born. Back in those days, they had all sorts of, he was commuting from New York City to New Bedford, where they lived at the time, and his boat blew up. And they had a horrible fire at sea, and he died. So she was pregnant with their 8th child when that happened. And so it was really, really a horrible thing for their family. So she moved to New York. But Jane Eliza had grown up on a slaveholding plantation in Virginia, and she hated slavery. And that's how she brought her 7 daughters and 1 son up as abolitionists. And one of the letters that I read was from one of the sisters to someone else talking about the slave market that they went to. The mother brought them to a slave market when they visited Charleston on just a social trip. But they stumbled on the slave market and they saw a woman. It is the saddest letter. She says they stumbled on the sale of this woman's children, and it changed them forever. So I start the book with that, and I always do 3 point of views, or at least I did for my first 3 books. Going forward, I'm going to change that, but I wanted to, it was hard to choose one of the daughters. And so Georgie, the middle daughter, was the one that I chose. And this is the early reader copy, so it has pictures. This is Jane Eliza. I don't know if you could, there's a little glare there. That's the mom, the poor dad who died. This is Abby, the oldest daughter, Jane, Mary, and they called her the beauty of the family. I mean, it's funny because nowadays we would never do that. But back then, she was the beauty. Everybody just kind of went, yeah, she's the beauty. This is Eliza. They're all kind of named Eliza, weirdly, like middle names. But this was Georgie's best friend. And this is Georgie. She was the middle daughter. And I chose her because she wanted to be a nurse so badly. I can't really tell you how that happens because it's a big part of the book. This is Hattie. She was the mom's best friend. And this is Carrie. Now, this gets a little complicated, but Carolyn Faraday's grandmother. So this is her great aunt that the story is about. Carrie's the baby girl of the family. Brilliant. I mean, so, and she's a great character in the book, I think. And this is the baby Charles. So that is kind of an introduction to the people in the book. And so I chose Georgie, but I thought I need two more characters. So I wanted to show their deep commitment to abolitionism, the abolition of slavery. So I wanted an enslaved character, and that's a 16-year-old Gemma, who's a house slave on a tobacco plantation in Maryland. And then the third character is the mistress of that plantation, Anne May Peeler Wilson. She has many names, and she's really bad. So that's kind of how the story started.
Fabulous. So tell us about I'd say some people separate out like research process and writing process, but for me, they kind of intertwine. So how about you just tell us about your process?
Wow. I love talking about process. Only another writer would ask you about your process.
But everybody wants to know.
Really? That surprises me.
Tell it like it is.
How the sausage is made.
Exactly.
I do a lot of research. I really love the research. And I ever since I wrote Lilac Girls and it was popular, I've been superstitious about doing every book that same way. So a lot of research. I go to the places. I spent a lot of time in Gettysburg, as well as I lived in Atlanta at the time when I first started writing it. So I went to a lot of the museums, former plantations around Atlanta. So that was super helpful. But I found a place called Sauterley, and it is on the banks of the Patuxent River in Maryland. And I thought, this is the perfect place. I'm gonna, because they've preserved, they have a cabin where the enslaved on the plantation lived, and they've preserved it so beautifully. And they actually make it a big part of the tour. A lot of those museums really don't. So I really thought Sauterley would be the perfect spot. So if you're ever in Hollywood, Maryland, you have to go to Sauterley and walk around, because that's where Anne May's house is. And there's a big white house on the hill, beautiful home, but two people lived in it, and the enslaved were in cabins. They were jammed into cabins. So it's a really interesting place to see, what slavery really was like at the time. Mm-hmm. So that's my process, and then I just do these. Do you want to see my outline?
Yes.
I do these nice outlines. You can't really read it, but
oh wow!
I don't know if it's
elaborate.
So each of the different, there's 3 tiers there, and they each represent one of the different characters. And so, because, when I first started Lilac Girls, I kept throwing stuff out. I mean, it took me 10 years to write, and no wonder, because I kept writing things, and my husband would be like, well, Hitler wasn't there then, or whatever. And so now if it's a historical book, I make sure it's consistent with the timeline. So that really helps. And then I just plug the scenes in, because I start thinking, what would be great scenes to write. And after that, I feel like I've got my blueprint, and don't you get nervous at the beginning of any book when it's like that blank page? And I know that's a cliche, but
so you're a plotter. you're a plotter then, right?
I didn't used to be.
Cancer.
Yeah. You know, I started this from, I mean, I don't have an MFA. I didn't even know. I thought you had to be like James Patterson to write a book. I didn't think that just anyone can write a book. So I just figured I would research. I didn't even think about writing a book until I met this book editor that my husband and I went out to dinner with one night. And she said, "Oh, did you know Mike? Did Mike tell you I'm a book editor? You should write about that Polish thing because I think it'd be really good. All I need is a chapter." So once I went down to Atlanta, I thought, well, I can't do that. Forget it. And I just liked researching. And so I went through the drive-through, my usual Starbucks, and ordered my decaf cappuccino grande. And by mistake, the barista gave me a caffeinated one, and I went home. And the story, I just started writing it. It was so great. I had gone to Catholic school as in high school, and the nuns used to talk about the ecstasy of marrying Jesus. And I used to think, oh my God, will I ever experience that? And then, once I started writing Lilac Girls, I experienced ecstasy. So I thought, I have to keep doing this.
I need to go to your Starbucks, clearly. That is amazing. And I want to say to everyone who's joining us, please feel free to put questions in the chat. I know that questions typically come at the end, but at least speaking for myself, I'm more than happy to hurl your questions at Martha as they come up. So please feel free to do that. So going on, I would like to know, first of all, are you working on something now? Can I ask that?
Yes. Well, Random House just acquired, not just, but actually a little while ago, 2 more books. Yeah. So I wish I could move. I wish I could show you. I don't know if I can, my, without making my light fall over. I don't know. I think I'm going to make my light fall over, and God knows.
Don't make your light fall over.
But anyway, I have a whole bulletin board full of characters for my 4th book, and it's a Cold War novel. And it's a little different, though. First of all, it only has 2 characters, and one, but it is all about Operation Paperclip. I don't know if you're familiar with that. That is an American U.S. Army situation where they took all of these, not what they called former Nazis, and scientists, and brought them to the United States to work on various programs. And so my story is about 2 women that survived Ravensbrück, one American, half Jewish, and one French girl, and a doctor there did terrible things to them, and they hunt him down all around the world. So it's a little bit more of a thriller in a way. It goes from Rome to Vienna to South America, and trying to hunt down this former Nazi that did terrible things. So that has been so much fun. And then after that comes an actual contemporary thriller that takes place. It's set in my house that I live in right now. I live on a hay farm in Connecticut. And my husband, it has scared me so much writing about my own house that Mike says that we have to move when we're done because I'm too scared living here anymore. But yeah, it's been really, really fun. I've never written a contemporary novel before, and it's just, really fun.
And so when you say Rome and Vienna, I think, because my own wings have been clipped. I was supposed to leave for my last research trip on March 11th last year, right before COVID hit, and I never went. So how are you managing all of this?
I read that in your author's note. I love your author's note. That is why I'm writing that book, I think, because I can't travel, but I can through the book. And it's been actually really fun. Part of it takes place in South America, and I'd love to go to South America. It's the first time I haven't been able to travel in order to research, but I still feel like, we're time traveling, like you're going to Poland, to Krakow. And you can still do it. One of my favorite books, The Tenderness of Wolves. Have you ever read that book?
You've not. Who wrote it? Do you know?
Penny, Steph Penny. I just keep going back and rereading it because her descriptions are so good. And she wrote it from, I think, Scotland, about Canada. Never set foot in Canada. So I always think, if she
can do it,
yeah.
I hear you. So I'm looking at the chat, and someone would like to know what the connection is to sunflowers with the book.
Oh, well, that's as you know, that's a little bit of a spoiler. The sunflower had a really special meaning in the Underground Railroad. And when I first started writing Lilac Girls, I had titled it The Rabbits of Ravensbrück. And I'm so glad that Random House retitled it. At first, I was like, what? How can you not, because you get attached to your working title. Yeah. But once they did that, first of all, people brought me lilacs all the time, and I still do, and I love that. And it just kind of started this motif where on my second book, it was roses. And then, and so I knew for the third book, I had to have at least a flower of some kind. And so in my research, I found out that the sunflower has a very special meaning in the Underground Railroad, but I can't divulge that.
That's okay. Let's say no more.
Yeah.
Now,
that's
is that your dog barking?
Yes, my son is grabbing him.
Okay, because no, it's fine. I'm worried that it's my dog barking. I'm trying to figure that. I'm like, whose dog is barking in the background? Is it the puppy? Okay, I feel much better.
When I'm doing an event, does he bark? He just knows. They put up the Tenderness of Wolves.
Oh, yay.
So cool.
Read that. I'm going to put that on my list.
It's really good. Her descriptions, because I don't know, I struggle with descriptions. It's just, I don't know. It's not my favorite part. Yeah. I like it, but the way she always inspires me because there's a cabin that she describes in it early in the book, and where this man lived and he's murdered, and she describes what it was like to come upon his body, and it is like you're there. So anyway, she's my. I find
authors who describe well incredibly daunting, right? Because that's not my forte, and so I find that it's both inspiring yet daunting.
Yeah, I disagree, but I know what you mean. It just takes a little more work maybe for us. It's just, but some people just, it just flows out. But you can't
you have to know yourself as a writer. You got to know where those kind of shortfalls are, I think.
Yeah, that is one of my shortfalls, I think.
For me too, for sure.
I also don't really like reading a lot of description. So, for me, it's better just to describe it briefly, enough to make you feel like you're there, and then move on to the good stuff.
Yeah. So I think this year has been so extraordinary for everyone, and I'd love to know sort of how has your world as a writer, you can take any piece, changed this year with everything that's gone on. I'm curious. You can take that in any way you would like, but I'm sort of curious how this COVID year has changed your world as a writer and an author.
Well, it was interesting reading your author's note about how COVID changed your life, because I was just thinking, I can really relate to that, because I was on the tarmac going from Alabama to Houston for my Lost Roses paperback tour last year, when my agent called and said, I wish you could continue on, because I know the fun part of the tour is coming up, because I was going to California and Florida. It was March, and I had been through all these tornadoes in the middle of the country, and I was ready to just, and she said, but you got to come home because it was COVID. And that was really, really hard. And but on the bright side, my daughter, one of my daughters, moved in with us. She was living in Brooklyn, and now she's back in Brooklyn, but she moved in with us, and also my son. We would not have had an event tonight because we had some technical difficulties, and he saved the day. So, it's been a joy having them here, but at the same time, I just need complete quiet in order to get into my fictive dream. And they laugh about that, are you in your fictive dream? But yes, I need that.
Do they put it in quotes? Are they sarcastic about it?
A little bit. Well, my husband too, because
I feel that.
I'll say, I need the door closed and complete quiet. And then a few minutes later, I'll be like, knock, knock. I know that, I just had this quick question. So anyway, not that I'm complaining, but it is, I used to just be here. I live in a hay farm. It's very isolated. I used to just be here by myself, and my husband worked in the city during the week. So I had complete quiet. But so, I've had to deal with that a little bit. But on the other side, it's really nice having my kids here. And they also do a lot for me. They take the dog to daycare and, do all sorts of stuff. So
can we talk about doggy daycare for a second? Because it saved my life, right? And last week, my dog got in trouble at daycare. And I was like, dear Lord, do not get kicked out, because I have no backup if that happens.
Who gets kicked out of daycare?
Good question, but apparently it can happen. I'm not going to tell tales, but apparently it can happen.
Really? If a dog is bad?
It is.
They call my dog Party Ollie, because when he arrives, it gets very exciting.
That's awesome. Party Ollie.
I'm just bragging. You know how moms do that?
I know.
It's
My
so
dog,
annoying.
little Scoop, got in trouble. I was like, not my baby. Anyhow, let's get the people in the chat want us to get back to business. And there's a question here that says, can you tell us why you chose Gettysburg as a setting, and what research did you do there?
Oh, well, everything in the book comes from real events, from these letters. And I just want to show you the letters. This is one of them. I don't know if it's, they're really cool. I read, part of the reason that I chose, of all the 7 sisters, I chose Georgie, is because this is a tiny bit of a spoiler, but she and her mom go to Gettysburg, and they nurse soldiers on the Gettysburg battlefield. They set up these really cool, the Sanitary Commission. Those are the very first nurses in the United States. And they go down, I can't tell you why, but they go down there and they end up staying for 3 weeks. And I knew that Georgie had written a book about it. And I thought, okay, that's great primary research. And I ordered it from Amazon, and I wish, I should find it to show people. It's like the size of a deck of cards, and it's, like a tiny little pamphlet. Back in those days, women were not supposed to be doing things like writing books, and certainly not out talking. Like, this would be unheard of. Her sister, Mary, the beauty, she wrote these incredible poems that she went viral in those days with these poems, and every soldier had them in their pocket on the battlefield, because it was about dying on the battlefield. And they assumed it was written by a man, and she could never in her lifetime admit that she had written it. And she kept writing poems, and everyone thought it was a man. So that was kind of a rough thing for women back then. But the reason I wrote about Gettysburg is because it was in their letters. They went to Gettysburg and spent 3 weeks there. They set up these special tents right next to, if you've been to the Gettysburg train station, right across the tracks. And I have some pictures on my website, but right across the tracks, they set up this tent where they would take the wounded. And of course, we all know that the wounded at Gettysburg, awful, terrible amputations. And they would put them on these cattle cars, and the train would come from Baltimore, and they were literally had cattle in them. Before that, there was hay, and they would set as gently as they could the wounded into these cars, close it up, and send it back to Baltimore backwards. They could not turn around. So the train went very slowly back with, all these wounded on it. And so anyway, that's why I wrote about Gettysburg. And I spent a lot of time there, my son and I. And I saw in the chat that that Valerie liked the dedication. My daughter, when the book came, she opened it and she said, "Mom, I just want to read you out loud the dedication because it makes me cry every time." And she did. And I started crying. And we all were crying because, it's just I dedicated it to my son. And because I dedicated the other books to each one of the daughters. And also he was with me at Gettysburg. And it was just so sad that so many moms lost their sons at Gettysburg. And I thought about that a lot when I was down there, and that I'm just so lucky to have my son still.
Absolutely. So much of what we do as mothers, I think, also comes into, our writing. But on a lighter note, dedicating books to children is tough, right? Because so I have twins, and if I dedicate it to one now and the other one's going to have to wait 1.5 or 2 years for her book, like I'm never going to, with the twin equities, it's complicated.
And the first one might say, oh, she likes her better.
And my son, who's older, his book was one of mine that was not particularly well known. And so I come home and he's always like, did you sell any copies of such and such? I'm like, no.
Oh. But you can rededicate.
Yes.
You can do it again.
I will.
And you're going to run out of people to dedicate your family member. You need to have more children.
I'm just keeping it a little more general at this point. But speaking of which, Karen in the chat asked, what kind of books do you read for pleasure when you're not writing?
I hate to say that I'm boring, but I read so much for research that it isn't until I'm done. Like I just turned in the 4th book. It's called The Golden Doves. I turned that into my editor. So now I feel like, not only am I'm doing tour stuff, but I can also read, which is so fun. Because I don't know, for some reason, while I'm writing, I feel like I should be reading about, the period, a lot about slavery and plantations and the Civil War. So, of course, I can read things like The Woman with the Blue Star, which is so good.
Thank you.
We get sent a lot of, I wish I had some of the things that the publisher sends that you get a lot of early reader copies too.
Yeah.
So I read a lot of those. But I also, since I'm writing a thriller for my 5th book, I've been reading a lot of thrillers.
Oh.
Yeah, and that's really, really fun. And going back and reading scary stuff like In Cold Blood, oh my God, that is just, I've been just scaring the wits out of myself lately. That's not really a thriller, but it's still, it gets me in the mood to kind of, write scary stuff. I read Woman in the Window. That was good. The Silent Patient, I've been reading all the big thrillers to kind of, because I've never written a thriller before. And, I don't know if you ever feel this way, but I feel like sometimes I'm kind of learning as I go.
Sure.
So,
learning craft as we go. Absolutely.
Yeah. So
I agree.
If you can read some, because before I wrote Lilac Girls, I had read a million Amy Tan books. Historical fiction was my genre. So I think you kind of absorb it. And, but now, I have to really bone up on my thrillers. Nice. So anybody out there, if you've read any good thrillers, please tell me.
Yes. I will digress for 1 second, and I wanted to say that I've been reading a lot. I'm doing 100 days of books right now, which I just had Sunflower Sisters in my 100 days. So across all genres and debut and nonfiction and fiction, and there's even a little YA thrown in. But it's been really fun. It actually has kind of upped my reading, because you go, ooh, I have to read their backlist.
You actually read all of those books?
Not at the time, but I've read them all already. So they're all books. Some of them are older. They're not all fresh books. They're not books that all came out this month. Some of them might have been in the past year or two, but they are all books I genuinely love. And so then I'm able to promote them across, Facebook and Instagram and Goodreads and do that. And it's been really fun. But I know what you say. It does take a chunk of, what I'm going to do time-wise, I think.
Yeah, I also think that I'm always afraid that I'm going to unknowingly take something. Do you ever worry about that?
Yeah, no, you have to be careful about what you read. Absolutely.
Yeah, especially other historical fiction, like Civil War stuff, for example.
Yeah.
Actually, there is, and I'm going to forget the name of it. I read an early reader copy and actually blurbed, now I can't remember the name of it. Conjure Women. It was so good. And while I was reading, it's about the Civil War, and she had a doll in there that's called a topsy-turvy doll.
Yeah.
And I had it in my manuscript too, although, her book was already published, so I had to go back and take it out of mine. So in a way, it was good that I read that, but sometimes things overlap.
Always very scary. I agree. Always very trepidatious. So we're nearing kind of the top of the hour, and I want to ask if anyone else has a question for Martha. Please go ahead and put it in the chat for us. We'd love to hear from you. And meanwhile, I would like to ask, what do you want to talk about that we haven't asked you tonight? What would you like your readers to know? What have we missed?
Oh my goodness. That's a tough one. Maybe talking about Anne May, the plantation mistress. I think that she's a fascinating character and also Gemma too. I read a lot of books written from from the viewpoint of enslaved people. And so I felt like she was a really interesting character to write. She had been taught to read and write. That was against the law in most states, but Maryland was a border state, so they were a little bit different. Her original owner, Aunt Tandy Rose, had taught her how to read and write, which gets her in a lot of trouble with the new mistress of the plantation, who's a younger woman, Anne May, because Anne May doesn't know how to write. And so she makes Gemma write all these really bad kind of spy things down in this book for Anne May. So that gets her in a lot of trouble. And meanwhile, Anne May is just the most spoiled human being in the world. Although my agent, when she read it, said that she liked Anne May the best.
Oh,
the characters. I know a lot of people say that about Herta Oberhauser, my the only Nazi doctor at Ravensbrück from LILAC Girls. But Kirkus weirdly said, not weirdly, but
you can say weirdly. It's okay.
I never get good reviews from those kinds of places.
Me either.
I wish I had the name of the actual thing, but they said that it had historical, what's the word, verisimilitude or whatever that word is, of a Ken Burns documentary, but so much more lurid. And I thought, lurid, wow. And I felt very kind of like, no one's ever called me lurid before.
I know, very sassy.
I looked it up. I always thought lurid meant more sexual, but it's actually violence and sex together.
Oh.
So I was like, excellent. And I think Anne May is responsible for a lot of the lurid part.
I cannot wait to read your lurid thriller.
I know. I will continue to be lurid. I promise.
Excellent.
I just do it naturally, I think.
I think we have time for one more question. So let's go ahead and ask the question, are any of your books scheduled to be made into movies?
Well, you have to answer this too. LILAC Girls was optioned by, Handmaid's Tale Elizabeth Moss.
Yeah. Which
was super exciting. But then, I don't know, nothing ever happened with it. So maybe someday, now that Nightingale is coming out as a movie, I'm hoping that they'll come looking for Pam Jenoff and Martha Hall Kelly books. Yes. That's going to be a huge smash, I think.
It will be. I love it.
Yeah. And so I think, how Hollywood is.
Right.
They as soon as one thing is popular, they all want to jump on that bandwagon. So I think that's good for us. Hopefully.
It is. Yes. Absolutely. I refer to the question as from your mouth to God's ears, right?
Yes. You have to leave that to the cinematic gods. What about you?
Well, Lost Girls of Paris was optioned for film, and that has since been changed to a limited run TV option. And I spoke with the writers, and they were the most amazing folks ever. So fingers crossed. Who knows? In
a way, that would almost be as good or better.
Agreed.
I mean, nowadays,
right?
That's all I watch. I don't go to the movies.
No, who does? I agree. You get it all at home. So I think we are just about there on time, but this has been amazing. Thank you so much. And I will let Martha have the last word.
Oh, God. I don't do well with the last word. But anyway, I hope everybody enjoys it. And if you get a chance, the Bellamy Faraday House in Bethlehem, Connecticut, is opening up May 1st to do tours again. You have to do it ahead of schedule. You have to call ahead.
Yep.
But it's really exciting because we're opening again, which is awesome.
Yay. I can't wait to have authors back in our bookstore again.
Yes.
And everybody back in the bookstore. I think someone asked when you think you'll be touring again, and I wonder when we'll have authors back in the store, and I'm probably fall.
Okay.
Maybe.
I just booked my first live thing out in California in November. So that lines up with what I'm thinking. So But I just
Excellent.
want to say thank you so much to Pam Jenoff.
Oh my gosh, such a pleasure.
Thank you
Can't wait to see you in
Pam.
person.
I know, that'll be fun. We'll have an adult beverage.
Yeah, that would be great.
And
Yes.
talk about our dogs.
We need to come to the store.
Exactly. Thank you, everybody.
Excellent. And if you want to buy the book, I highly recommend it. Sunflower Sisters. We have signed copies and signed book plates. Just click on the green button below and we will send you a copy. So
Thank you so much, guys.
Bye.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you. Bye.